Traveling to Arizona was never in my plans, but the opportunity for a job interview at my dream company made the trip irresistible. After a quick search for accommodations, I opted for an Airbnb in Phoenix. It was a simple but comfortable house located in a quiet neighborhood, away from the hustle and bustle of downtown. The house had a welcoming facade, with a front porch adorned with plants and a rocking chair that looked inviting. I arrived on Monday afternoon after a tiring flight. Upon entering the Airbnb, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The house was exactly like in the photos, clean, well-decorated, and cozy. The living room had a soft sofa in front of a flat-screen TV, and the kitchen was equipped with everything I might need. My room was at the back, with a window overlooking the desert. I unpacked my bags and organized my outfit for the next day's interview, hanging it carefully in the closet. I spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing my notes and preparing a presentation I hoped would impress the interviewers. In the evening, I prepared a simple dinner and decided to relax a bit before bed. I sat on the sofa, flipping through TV channels while the desert breeze blew gently through the window cracks. Everything seemed calm and normal. I set the alarm to wake up early the next morning and lay down, trying to ignore the growing nervousness. I quickly fell asleep, lulled by fatigue and expectations for the next day. Everything was in order, and I was determined to do my best in the interview. Little did I know that this would be the last peaceful night I would have in that house. I woke up on Tuesday morning to the sound of the alarm, feeling refreshed and ready for the big day. The interview was a success. The company seemed even more incredible than I imagined, and I left there with a sense of accomplishment. To celebrate, I spent the rest of the day exploring Phoenix. I visited some tourist spots, had lunch at a local restaurant, and spent the afternoon relaxing in a nearby park. I returned to the Airbnb early in the evening, feeling satisfied with the productive day. I decided I deserved a quiet night watching TV and eating something light. I made a sandwich, sat on the sofa, and started watching a movie. The house was silent except for the TV and the occasional sigh of the wind outside. That was when I heard the first knock. It was a dry and quick sound, like someone had given a light tap on my bedroom window. My heart raced a little, but I quickly thought it might just be a tree branch or some animal. I got up and went to the window, slightly pulling the curtain to peek outside. There was nothing, just the desert's darkness stretching infinitely. I returned to the sofa, trying to convince myself it was nothing. I resumed the movie but couldn't focus. The feeling that something was wrong persisted. I tried to distract myself, but my mind kept returning to that knock on the window. Around 11 at night, I decided it was best to go to sleep. Tomorrow would be a new day, and I didn't want to be tired. I prepared for bed, turned off the lights, and lay down, trying to calm my thoughts. But the discomfort remained, a disturbing feeling of being watched. I fought against the anxiety, telling myself that I was just tired and imagining things. Eventually, sleep overcame me, and the house plunged into a restless silence, interrupted only by the soft sound of the desert breeze. I woke up early on Wednesday, feeling calmer. The morning light dispelled some of the previous night's irrational fear. I made a light breakfast and decided to spend the day exploring more of Phoenix. I visited some museums and local shops, trying to absorb as much of the local culture as possible while my mind was still light and carefree. In the evening, I returned to the Airbnb intending to relax again. I chose a comedy movie to watch, something that would help keep my mind off the strange knock from the night before. I sat on the sofa with a bowl of popcorn, trying to enjoy the evening. The weather seemed to cooperate, with a cool breeze coming through the open windows, bringing the smell of the desert. That was when I suddenly heard another knock on the window. The same dry and quick sound, this time louder and more insistent. My heart raced. I immediately got up, feeling a wave of adrenaline rush through my body. I went to the window, opening the curtain with a sharp motion. Once again, there was nothing outside, just the darkness and the vast expanse of the desert. I decided to check the back porch just to make sure there was no one around. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The flashlight's light cut through the darkness, revealing the dry plants and sand around the house. That was when I heard a distant clicking sound coming from the desert. It was a strange sound, almost mechanical, echoing in the night silence. I pointed the flashlight in the sound's direction, and to my surprise, saw a figure dressed in dark clothes standing a few meters away. The figure moved quickly when I noticed its presence, moving away into the desert. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice echoing into the night. There was no response. I threatened to call the police, and the figure disappeared into the darkness. I went back inside, feeling my heart still racing. I locked all the doors and windows, trying to calm myself. I tried watching the movie again, but I couldn't get the image of that figure in the desert out of my mind. Who could it be? And why were they lurking around the house? I spent the rest of the night on high alert, listening to every little sound, with the fear growing with each passing moment. The clicking sound still echoed in my mind, a disturbing memory I couldn't ignore. Fear and uncertainty became my constant companions, making me question whether I was safe in that house. Little did I know that the worst night was yet to come, bringing with it a new wave of terror and mystery. On Thursday night, my nerves were at their peak. Every noise the house made seemed amplified, and the memory of the mysterious figure still haunted my thoughts. I tried distracting myself with the TV, but my attention was constantly divided between the screen and the sounds around me. The knock on the window, the clicking sound, the figure in the desert. It was all starting to wear me down mentally. That was when I heard an unmistakable sound coming from the bedroom closet. A click, similar to the one from the desert, but much closer this time. My heart raced, and a shiver ran down my spine. I stood up slowly, trying to control my breathing as I walked towards the bedroom. Every step seemed to echo in the silence of the house. When I reached the bedroom, I hesitated for a moment before opening the closet door. The clicking sound continued, intermittent and unsettling. I gathered all my courage and opened the door at once. To my surprise, there was nothing inside. The clothes hanging were exactly as I had left them, and there was no sign of any device or person that could have made that sound. Suddenly, the clicking sound came from behind me. I turned around quickly but saw nothing. The feeling of being watched became unbearable. I ran to the living room, grabbed the car keys, and left the house without looking back. I sat in the car, locking the doors and calling 911. I explained the situation to the operator, trying not to sound hysterical. The police arrived quickly, and together we conducted a thorough search of the house. They found nothing out of place, no sign of forced entry or another person's presence. The officers reassured me, but I still felt deeply unsettled. I decided that I would not stay in that house any longer. I hastily packed my things and drove to a nearby hotel. Finally, I felt a sense of security, even if minimal. The next day, I contacted Airbnb and the host to report the incident. I managed to get a partial refund, but that mattered little at that moment. The experience had been profoundly disturbing. I suspected the host might be involved, as there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that whoever it was had a key. However, this theory remains uncertain, leaving me uneasy about who it could have been and why they watched me. I left Arizona with the feeling that there was something sinister I would never fully understand. Even now, back in the safety of my home, I still think about that figure in the desert and the unsettling sounds. It was an experience that changed my perception of safety, leaving an invisible scar that constantly reminds me of the dangers that may lurk, even in the most unexpected places. My name is Jessica. I am 18 years old now. But the story I'm about to tell happened when I was 14. I live in Seattle, Washington, and back then, I frequently went to the Walmart near my house to buy clothes and other necessities, especially before I was old enough to drive. I always liked the convenience of Walmart and the variety of products available. Walking to Walmart was a regular part of my routine since it was only a 15-minute walk. Sometimes my friend Olivia would come with me, but I often went alone. Seattle is a vibrant and busy city, and I always felt relatively safe walking the streets, even at night. The Walmart I frequented is located in a busy commercial area, with several other stores and restaurants around. The street lighting and constant flow of people always made me feel at ease. Going to Walmart became a peaceful and even relaxing part of my day. Little did I know that this simple and safe routine was about to turn into a nightmare that would change my life forever. One night, I decided to go to Walmart alone. I put on my AirPods, turned on my favorite playlist, and started my walk. I was excited to check out the new women's clothing collection. When I arrived, I headed straight to the clothing section and started looking at the jeans. While I was focused on choosing jeans, I noticed an older man approaching. He was around 50, had gray hair, and wore glasses. He started talking to me, mentioning that his daughter bought the same jeans I was looking at. I responded politely, trying to be courteous. He kept talking, commenting on clothing styles, and trying to make conversation. Although he initially seemed harmless, I began to feel a bit uncomfortable with his insistence on continuing the conversation. I decided to pretend to look for another type of clothing at the end of the same aisle, but he followed me in that direction. My heart began to beat faster, and the feeling of discomfort intensified. The man didn't give up and kept talking to me, now with more personal questions. He asked my age, and when I replied that I was 14, his reaction was disturbing. He smiled in a strange way and said I looked older. My discomfort grew, but I tried to stay calm. He then asked my name and which school I attended. At that moment, I decided I needed to make up something to protect myself. I said I was just visiting my cousin and lived in another state. He frowned, seeming not to believe my story, and insisted that he had seen me before, which sent a chill down my spine. I tried to move away again, but he kept following me. My heart was racing, and I knew I needed to get out of that situation. The atmosphere became increasingly tense, and the store, which once seemed like a safe and familiar place, now transformed into a scene of fear and uncertainty. Finally, I said I needed to go to the bathroom and quickly walked away. My body was trembling, and I felt cold sweat on my forehead. As I walked away, I discreetly looked over my shoulder and saw that he was still watching me from a distance, with that same disturbing smile on his face. I knew I needed to find a way to get out of there safely. As soon as I left the bathroom, I decided I would pay for the jeans and leave the store as quickly as possible. I went to the cashier, paid for my purchase, and left Walmart, thinking I would be free of the man. However, as I started walking through the adjacent mall, I noticed he was also walking in the mall. Trying to remain calm, I saw the man sitting on a bench outside Victoria's Secret. He never took his eyes off me. Panic began to set in, and I knew I needed to find a way to get away from him. I started walking quickly, looking around for a safe place or someone who could help me. I passed by several stores, but didn't want to go into any of them, for fear that he would follow me inside and find me again. Finally, I entered a sporting goods store, hoping the crowd and employees could offer some protection. As soon as I entered the store, I took out my phone and called my mom, quickly explaining that I thought I was being followed and needed a ride. My mom, sensing the panic in my voice, advised me to stay in a store with lots of people until she arrived. I agreed and hung up, but I was still very nervous. I went to the cashier and explained the situation, asking for help. The cashier, a sympathetic woman, immediately offered assistance. Other customers in the store began to notice my distress and also kept an eye on the man. The presence of more people around me gave me some relief, but I was still very scared. While waiting for my mom to arrive, I looked outside the store and saw the man standing across the corridor still watching me. He looked irritated but didn't come closer. The cashier and some customers stayed by my side, ensuring I was safe. When my mom finally arrived, I ran to her feeling a wave of relief. My mom quickly entered the store, her face filled with concern and relief upon seeing me. I felt immediate relief seeing her, as if all the fear and tension could finally dissipate. I thanked the cashier and the customers who helped me, and we left together. As we walked through the mall, I noticed the man was still around but now kept a greater distance, probably due to my mom's presence. Little did I know that the relief I felt was only temporary. As we headed to the parking lot, I tried to explain what had happened, but my voice was trembling. My mom kept me close, quickening her pace. When we finally got into the car and locked the doors, I felt a sense of safety, but also persistent unease. The man was standing at the entrance of the mall watching us, and the fear grew inside me again. My mom called mall security and reported the incident, describing the man and his suspicious behavior. They promised to keep an eye out and conduct additional patrols to ensure the safety of shoppers. During the drive home, I tried to explain everything that had happened in detail, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave me. On the way home, I started to calm down a bit. My mom drove with a serious expression, focused on getting us home safely. That's when I remembered the jeans I had bought. I took the bag from the store and pulled out the jeans to examine them more closely. While holding them, I felt something hard inside the pocket, something that still scares me to this day. Curious and a little scared, I put my hand in the pocket and pulled out a photo. When I saw the image, my heart raced again. It was a picture of me and Olivia eating ice cream at the mall. I clearly remembered that day, which happened months ago. What scared me the most was the fact that someone had taken that photo without us noticing. I turned the photo over, and there was something written on the back. "I've always been around." I showed the photo to my mom, who turned pale upon reading the message. She immediately turned the car around and drove straight to the nearest police station. We ran inside, and my mom handed the photo to the officers, explaining the whole situation from the beginning. Despite their efforts, the man was never found. The police reviewed the security camera footage from the mall and Walmart, but he seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The uncertainty of not knowing who he was or what he really wanted left us in a constant state of alert. My name is Mark. I'm 23 years old, and I work at Walmart in Phoenix, Arizona. This is my second job, as I recently moved into a new apartment and need to supplement my income to cover all expenses. Phoenix is a vibrant and bustling city, and Walmart reflects that. Every day I deal with a wide variety of customers, each with their own needs and temperaments. My duties at Walmart are diverse. I work as a cashier, fitting room attendant, and general sales associate, helping out wherever I'm needed. This keeps me busy and allows me to learn different aspects of store operations. Working here can be exhausting, but it's also rewarding, especially when I help a customer find exactly what they're looking for. Little did I know that a seemingly ordinary day at work was about to turn into a nightmare that would change my life forever. It was a typical day at Walmart, and I was having another routine day at work, where my main task was to help customers find products and keep the shelves organized. At the beginning of my shift, the store was busy, as always, with people rushing through their shopping. Some customers were friendly and appreciated my help, while others were difficult and irritable, but I did my best to stay calm and patient. During the shift, I helped an elderly lady find the perfect gift for her grandson's birthday, organized several shelves in the electronics section, and dealt with an especially rude customer who complained about the price of an item. Days like this were common, and I was used to handling different types of people and situations. I was in the middle of one of these tasks when something unexpected happened, something that would turn this ordinary day into one I would never forget. I was focused on organizing a shelf in the men's clothing section when I heard a familiar voice calling my name. I turned around and saw Lisa, my ex-girlfriend, walking toward me. I was surprised and a bit unsettled. I hadn't seen her since we broke up tumultuously a few months ago. Lisa seemed happy to see me and tried to hug me. I instinctively stepped back, remembering how our relationship had ended. Lisa was controlling and obsessive, and even after the breakup, she continued to harass me, which led me to block her on all communication platforms. Seeing her there in front of me brought back all the uncomfortable memories. She started talking excitedly, as if nothing bad had happened between us. I could hardly believe what was happening. My heart was pounding, as I couldn't understand why she was so calm and happy to see me. I tried to keep my composure while she talked about how she had found out where I worked through a mutual friend. A chill ran down my spine as I realized she had been watching me and planning this encounter. The conversation with Lisa quickly became uncomfortable when she started asking why I had blocked her on all social networks and complaining about the end of our relationship. I tried to stay calm and explain that I needed to move on and that she should find someone else who could make her happy, but she kept insisting. I took the opportunity to ask which mutual friend had revealed my workplace, but she just smiled enigmatically with a fixed, penetrating look and refused to answer. Then I saw her clench her fists tightly, and that mysterious smile quickly transformed into a face full of hatred. I felt a tightness in my chest, and realized that the situation was about to get out of control. I tried to be firm and asked her to leave, explaining that I was at work and couldn't deal with this at the moment. However, Lisa refused to leave and started raising her voice, attracting curious looks from customers and coworkers. With no other option, I walked away to an area restricted to employees, leaving Lisa in the clothing section. My heart was racing, and I knew I needed a plan. I seriously considered the idea of getting a restraining order against her, but first, I needed to calm down and think clearly. After staying in the employee area for a while, I returned to work and didn't see her in the store for the rest of my shift. After work, I went home, where I live with my roommate Paul. I was exhausted and disturbed by the encounter with Lisa, but I tried to stick to my evening routine. I had dinner and played video games to unwind before bed. I told Paul about the incident, and he was also concerned, suggesting that I should take legal action. I decided to go to bed early that night because I was mentally exhausted. Later that night, I woke up suddenly. I can't say for sure what woke me up, maybe it was a nightmare or a strange noise in the house, but I woke up scared and with the feeling that something was wrong. I noticed that my bedroom door was slightly open, something I never let happen. I got up carefully and went to check the front door. To my surprise, it was unlocked, and the spare key we usually kept hidden outside was missing. But my heart really started racing when I went into the kitchen and saw that the largest knife from our knife block was missing. I began to panic. I ran to Paul's room, went in, and locked the door. Paul woke up startled, asking what was going on. I quickly explained what I had seen, and while we were discussing what to do, I heard knocking on the bedroom door. My body froze when I recognized Lisa's voice, begging to talk. Paul grabbed the phone and called the police while I pushed a chair against the door to keep it closed, trying to stay calm. The situation was tense and chaotic. As I held the bedroom door with all my strength, I could hear Lisa on the other side, her voice filled with instability. "Mark, please, I just want to talk," Lisa pleaded, her voice trembling. "I still love you and forgive anything that happened. Let's work this out." A chill ran down my spine. "Lisa, you're scaring me. Go away, please. We're calling the police," I shouted back, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you know I've already been inside your house while you slept?" she revealed, her voice taking on a sinister tone. "Don't you remember the red gift I left on your bed last week?" I then remembered waking up one day to find a pair of red panties on my bed, but I thought it was Paul bragging about another fun night with our new neighbor. At this point, I was more than scared, but the situation was about to get even worse. I tried to be assertive, disguising the fear I was feeling, and shouted, "You're crazy! Get out of here now!" Lisa began to lose control. Her voice turned hysterical and full of rage. "You don't love me anymore! You will pay for this!" She started stabbing the bedroom door, each blow echoing through the wood and creating larger and larger holes. "I could have killed you if I wanted to," she screamed. The next moments were a blur of absolute terror. Paul was holding the phone with trembling hands, trying to stay calm while talking to the police dispatcher. Lisa continued stabbing the door, and I could already see parts of her face through the holes made by the knife. Her screams, rage, and desperation created a scene of horror. Finally, exhausted and defeated, Lisa stopped stabbing the door. She backed away, sobbing, and shouted one last time, "You will regret this, Mark. You will regret this." Her voice echoed down the hallway as she left the house, leaving the knife stuck in the door. Shortly after, the police arrived at the house, but Lisa had already disappeared. The officers searched the area but couldn't find her. She was found 2 days later, attempting to break into my parents' house, who lived 350 miles away from Phoenix, armed with a knife. I was shocked and terrified to realize she was willing to go to such lengths to find me. This experience has left me deeply shaken. I'm now taking legal steps to ensure my safety and considering moving to a new location to avoid further incidents. It's terrifying to think how someone you once trusted can become a threat to your life. Fishing has always been my refuge. Now, nearly 60 years old and after decades immersed in this passion, I have found in fishing a way to connect with nature and escape the worries of the world. My kids have gone on with their lives, and now the house is always quiet. Sometimes, I miss the busy days of playing football in the backyard with them. However, the peace of the lake always consoles me, even if just for a few hours. Every morning that I go out fishing, I'm filled with a tranquility that only the water can provide. On that particular April morning, I woke up before dawn. The fresh air and light mist created a perfect atmosphere for a peaceful day of fishing. I prepared my gear and headed to the lake, a secluded spot I rarely visited. As I paddled toward the center of the lake, the rhythmic sound of water against the boat was a familiar melody that soothed me. I had in mind to catch a largemouth bass using my trusty medium-action rod and a wacky rig. That morning, everything seemed to be just perfect for fishing, or so I thought. But there was something in the air that made me uneasy, an almost imperceptible feeling that the day wouldn't be like the others. Little did I know that day would mark the beginning of a series of events that would change my life forever, revealing long-buried secrets and awakening dangers I could never have predicted. The sun began to rise on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The lake was serene, wrapped in an almost reverent silence. I was completely immersed in the moment, waiting for the first tug on the line when something broke that tranquility. On the other side of the lake, something unusual caught my eye. It wasn't the first time I had seen something strange, but that scene left me with a feeling of unease that I couldn't ignore. I paused for a moment, squinting to try and understand what I was seeing. 3 hooded figures were gathered on the opposite shore, doing what looked like some digging. The scene was peculiar, and something in me said it wasn't just a regular camping or gardening activity. I kept watching, my heart beating a little faster with curiosity and a hint of apprehension. The figures were removing objects from the hole, and the sight left an ominous feeling in the air. I decided to grab my binoculars, which I always kept in my backpack for birdwatching. What I saw made me even more intrigued. They were taking objects out of the ground, and one by one, throwing them into the lake. The shine of the objects in the morning light left me unsettled. What were they doing there? Why were they throwing those things into the water? Questions began swirling in my mind, and I knew I couldn't return to my fishing without understanding what was going on. The sight of the hooded figures affected me in a way I didn't expect. The lake, once a place of peace, now seemed to hold a dark secret. It wasn't as if I had never seen strange people there, but this was different. That bizarre scene awakened a curiosity I couldn't ignore, and my mind was set on figuring out what exactly was happening on that lakeshore. It was as if I had been pulled into a parallel reality where the usual tranquility had been replaced by a disturbing mystery. I sat in the boat for a few minutes, fighting the urge to row over there immediately. Part of me said I should leave it alone, but another part was increasingly intrigued. The hooded figures were moving with an almost military precision, as if they knew exactly what they were doing. Finally, I decided I needed to investigate closer. Carefully, I paddled towards where the figures were, being careful not to make any noise that would draw their attention. Getting closer, I realized that the place where they were digging was a small clearing on the lake's edge, surrounded by dense trees. The scene was strangely solemn, as if witnessing a forbidden ritual. The sun was a little higher now, lighting the water with a golden glow that contrasted with the sinister scenario. The figures finished what they were doing, and then slowly walked away. The opportunity to investigate was before me, but the apprehension was still palpable. I waited a few minutes to ensure they were gone before rowing to the opposite shore. The silence of the place was oppressive. Each sound seemed amplified amidst the emptiness. When I finally arrived at the site, I noticed that the soil was disturbed and some footprints were left behind. However, what was submerged was what really captured my attention. I looked at the water, trying to discern what they had thrown there. Knowing I couldn't simply ignore what I saw, I used my depth finder to try and understand more about what was at the lake's bottom. The feeling that something was wrong wouldn't leave me, but I needed to know. When I detected something solid at the bottom, adrenaline took over. I switched my hook for a larger one and started pulling, bringing something heavy and metallic to the surface. It was then I realized what I had in my hands was a 9mm pistol. The shock and terror of the discovery were real and palpable, making my heart race. The weight of the gun in my hands was a tangible sign that I was involved in something much bigger than I imagined. What should have been a peaceful morning of fishing had turned into a terrifying puzzle. I looked around, half expecting the hooded figures to reappear, but the shore was deserted. The silence was oppressive. Only the sound of water touching the boat filled the air. I knew I needed to get out of there immediately, but my mind was overwhelmed with questions. I decided not to look for anything else at the bottom of the lake. I wrapped the gun in a cloth and carefully placed it in my backpack, aware of the danger it represented. As I rowed back, I felt the lake's calmness had vanished, replaced by a sense of urgency. Each stroke seemed heavy, as if the lake itself was holding my boat back. As soon as I reached the shore, I gave one last look around, still feeling like someone was watching me. Adrenaline was still coursing through my veins as I drove home. I couldn't get the image of the gun and the hooded figures out of my head. My heart was still pounding, as if warning me about the danger I had touched. When I arrived home, I knew I couldn't keep this a secret. I contacted the police, reporting the discovery and the suspicious activity at the lake. Every word I said seemed to make the situation even more real and threatening. The police arrived quickly, taking the gun and asking me several questions. They promised to investigate the case, but something in their expression told me it wasn't the first time they had heard something like this. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what I had seen and what it might mean. That night, sitting in my rocking chair, the house felt emptier than ever. I was alone with my thoughts, aware that something had changed. That night, sleep was hard to find. The day's images kept appearing in my mind, mingling with restless dreams. I woke up several times, convinced someone was at the door. The silence of the house was unsettling, and I wondered if I had done the right thing by involving the police. Somehow, I knew this discovery would bring more mysteries than answers, and the tranquility I cherished seemed to be slipping through my fingers. After my call to the police, the reality of what I had discovered began to sink in. The police returned to the lake to investigate, but days went by without any updates. The lack of answers increased my anxiety, and the feeling of being watched continued to haunt me. I began to notice small signs around me. A strange car parked on the corner, nocturnal footsteps in front of my house, and strange noises during some nights. I decided to take precautions at home. I installed security cameras around the property and spoke with neighbors, alerting them to what I had seen. Some looked at me skeptically, while others shared stories of strange encounters they had also had. This made me realize that the lake, once seen as a safe haven, might have a dark side that few knew about. My mind couldn't stop thinking about theories of what those men were doing. The police finally contacted me, but the investigation hadn't advanced much. They said the gun was old, and there were no clear records linking it to any recent crimes. The other clues, like the footprints or any objects I might have seen, led nowhere. Frustration grew within me, knowing the police had no answers, and the responsibility to understand the mystery fell on my shoulders. The nights grew longer and more disturbing. Once, I heard voices whispering outside the window, and when I looked, I saw two silhouettes disappearing into the night. This made me question whether they knew I was investigating or if they were trying to intimidate me to keep quiet. It was an oppressive feeling, as if the lake was extending its shadows into my life, stealing my peace and security. Each night became a battle to maintain sanity. The increasing pressure led me to a crossroads. I knew I needed to continue with my life, but the lake mystery wouldn't let me be. I decided that despite the risks, I should try to find out more on my own. I talked to friends and researched old stories about the region, trying to see if there was any connection. The doubt remained. How far was I willing to go to reveal the truth? With each passing day, the desire for answers grew, even knowing they might not be what I expected. The feeling of being watched became a part of my daily life. Every shadow seemed to hide a secret, and every nighttime noise was an invisible threat. The silhouettes I had seen at night were not a figment of my imagination. One morning I found my garden overturned, with footprints left in the soil. Fear began to consume me, and I knew I had to find a way to protect my home and mind from this growing terror. One night, as I watched the security camera footage, I saw something disturbing. Two hooded figures were in my backyard, rummaging around the trees. My mind raced with possibilities, from an attempt to intimidate me to something much more sinister. I immediately called the police, but by the time they arrived, the figures had disappeared, leaving only the echo of fear in the air. The invisible presence was real and increasingly bold. The following days were filled with palpable tension. I decided to intensify my vigilance and began keeping detailed records of any suspicious activity around my house. Every shadow passing by my window at night became a potential intruder, and the weight of the unknown began to affect my sanity. It was clear the figures wouldn't give up easily, and I was preparing for their next move. The pressure was pushing me to the edge, and I knew I needed to do something to regain control. I began investigating on my own, revisiting the lake and its surroundings, looking for clues the police might have missed. I spoke with fishermen and local residents, hoping someone had seen something. But the lake held its secrets firmly, and the sense of powerlessness grew with each passing day. My investigation was about to reveal something I didn't expect. During a conversation with a longtime town resident, I discovered that the hooded figures belonged to a local group known for their suspicious activities. Rumors said they were involved in smuggling and hiding valuable items. This information brought a new perspective to what I had witnessed, but also intensified the danger I was in. With this new knowledge, the puzzle pieces began to fit together. The pistol I found was just part of their operation, probably a mistake they hoped to correct quickly. The idea that I was in the way of something so dangerous was terrifying, but it also drove me to seek the truth. I knew I couldn't ignore what I had discovered, even if it meant putting myself at risk. However, knowing more also meant I needed to be more cautious. I couldn't trust anyone completely, and every conversation seemed to have the potential to expose me. The hooded figures were not just a physical threat, they were a constant reminder of what was at stake. I began to question every interaction I had, keeping my inner circle informed but limited. The local authorities, now more aware of the situation's gravity, intensified their patrols in the area. Still, the sense of security was far from achieved. I knew any mistake could be fatal, but I was determined to find out what else the lake was hiding. The shadows seemed to be closing in around me, but the hope of solving the mystery kept me moving forward. As I continued my search for answers, each day revealed new layers of complexity. What started as a simple fishing trip had turned into a direct confrontation with a dark past and a dangerous present. I felt like an amateur detective, balancing fear and determination. The lake, with its calm waters, had become a stage of secrets, and I was determined to uncover each one, no matter the cost. The feeling of impending danger hung in the air. Every twilight brought a new fear, and I knew the confrontation with the hooded figures was inevitable. One night, while reviewing the recordings, I noticed something different. One of the hooded men was looking directly at the camera, as if he knew he was being watched. It was a clear warning that they knew about my surveillance, and it only heightened the sense of threat I felt. That same night, the confrontation happened. I was in my living room, going over notes, when I heard the distinct sound of heavy footsteps in the garden. My heart raced. I ran to the window and saw the hooded figures, this time with more determination. They were tired of subtle threats. I left the house, camera in hand, determined to face the fear they represented. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, and I knew I couldn't hesitate. The tension in the air was palpable as I approached the group. The shadows moved threateningly, but I kept the camera recording, evidence of anything that might happen. The flash captured their partially covered faces, and I could see they were angry. "You should have stayed out of this," a rough, menacing voice spoke, echoing in the night. The coldness in their words made me realize how dangerous they were. There was no room for doubt or retreat. Amidst the tension, my recording strategy became my shield. I raised the camera, and with a courage I didn't know I had, challenged them to back off, warning that the police were already on their way. They hesitated for a moment, perhaps surprised by my unexpected resistance. Finally, with a look of contempt, they slowly backed away, their silhouettes disappearing into the darkness. However, the fear persisted. I knew this victory was temporary. Seeing the police lights approaching, I felt a momentary relief. They arrived quickly, lighting up my yard with powerful flashlights. Despite the police intervention, a sense of unease remained. I knew the group could return, more determined than ever. But for now, I was safe. What happened in that yard served as a reminder that I had crossed the line with those men. But the truth needed to be revealed, and I was more determined than ever to expose the secrets of the lake. The feeling of imminent danger hung in the air. With each twilight, a new wave of fear washed over me, and I knew the confrontation with the hooded figures was just a matter of time. One night, while reviewing the security recordings, something caught my attention. One of the hooded men looked directly at the camera, a fixed stare that clearly said they were aware of my surveillance. It was a warning that I had crossed dangerous lines, and the fear grew ever more. That same night the confrontation happened. I was in my living room, absorbed in my case notes, when I heard heavy footsteps in the garden. My heart raced as I ran to the window. The hooded figures were there, with a determination that made it clear they were no longer interested in mere threats. They were tired of veiled intimidations. I grabbed my camera and went out to face them, feeling adrenaline coursing through my veins. The tension in the air was palpable as I approached the group. The shadows moved threateningly, but I continued to record, wanting evidence of anything that might happen. The flash captured partially covered faces, and the hatred in their eyes was unmistakable. "You should have stayed out of this." A rough and menacing voice resonated in the night. The coldness in their words revealed how dangerous they truly were, and I realized there was no room for retreat. With the camera raised as my only shield, I tried to stay calm. I pointed to the distant approaching lights, hinting that the police were already on their way. To my surprise, this made them hesitate. After a moment of charged silence, they slowly backed away, their silhouettes dissolving into the darkness. Despite their retreat, I knew this victory was only temporary, and that the threat still hung over me like a shadow. As soon as the police lights illuminated the yard, a brief relief washed over me. Their presence brought a momentary sense of security, but the unease persisted. I knew that no matter how hard they tried to protect, they couldn't be there all the time. That night was the breaking point for me. I decided I couldn't continue living under constant fear and surveillance. The choice to walk away from it all became clear. Within a few weeks, I moved to another city, leaving behind the mystery of the lake and its shadows. I never found out what was really at stake, but sometimes the unknown is a lighter burden than the truth.